what point you made the decision to start an alternative lifestyle?
Yeah, I think it was always building in me, but I just didn't know how to do it. How did I break away from the corporate world? The world in London, which paid well, which I'd invested my time in through experience and exams, and invested, I don't know, going to university and getting an appropriate degree, which was in economics. But I think there was something in me which started before the Camino, really, which I think I had taken a sabbatical, actually, sort of about 6 or 7 years before I went on the Camino. I'd taken a sabbatical, and that sabbatical of a year turned into 18 months, and backpacked around South America. And I think you might say travel corrupted me, or it opened my eyes to freedom and how other cultures and other ways of living, and just the joyous experience of experiencing new countries and new places in the world. But when I came back from that, I didn't know. I was back in London. We'd rented out our apartment. Still had a mortgage to pay. So even though I'd sort of, my mind had been, it had seen so many things and given me lots of ideas, I didn't know how to sort of change my life in terms of, being able to support myself financially. And I wanted to see more of the world. So I ended up, actually, my old company offered me a job back with the company, slightly different role, but generally doing the same sort of thing, investment related work. And that was okay for a couple of years. That was okay for a couple of years because I think I sort of had new energy. I did from travel, I had new energy, and I had perhaps some wisdoms to share, or maybe when I was in a boring client meeting, or a meeting which, not that I was looking down on people, but I kind of had this sense of like, oh, I've climbed the Andes, I've climbed, I've been to Machu Picchu, I've backpacked in Colombia and the jungle and things. I had this feeling like, I've done a lot of my life. But slowly but surely, roll forward another 3 or 4 years, and I was the routine of life, right? The routine of life and the same sort of work. And I just didn't really feel I fitted into the corporate world, really. It was all advantageous in terms of getting a mortgage and owning an apartment. So
what was the match between you and the corporate world? What was wrong, like, between why you couldn't fit in?
I think there was something in me which wanted to be more creative. There was something in me which wanted to, so before writing some books, and it was the Camino which sparked, just suddenly gave me the creative spark, or reminded me that there was something creative inside of me. Before writing some books, because of the Camino, creative writing I'd done, or was it creative? The only writing I'd really done was kind of writing investment reports or client bulletins, and that was fine to begin with. When you're in a new job and a new thing, but as time rolled on, I think I had things to say. I think I wanted to be more creative, and so that was when the work got repetitive, and I wanted to have the time, to free up the time to have experience life, and to be more creative and write. And I think after traveling for 18 months in Latin America, I realized, at least for me, how to put it, you need creativity in to put creativity out in your life. And so having new experiences with travel, I'm not somebody who could suddenly sit down at a desk and write, boy wizard stories or something. I don't have that imagination. I need to sort of absorb life and experiences. And that's when sort of, for me, that my ideas come. They kind of light, they sort of light something up in my mind, and I have ideas. So I was reminded again, after sort of going traveling for 18 months, having returned for a few years, that I was stale, and I wanted something to say. And that eventually it came to a turning point. probably about 6 months before the Camino that I quit my job again, and I didn't quite know where I was going. So what I did was I'd sort of, you might say at this point I was running away. I reverted, and this is the point where I was going through marital problems, and I went traveling again. I went back to parts of South America and revisited some of the places, or visited some of the places I didn't get a chance to do previously. And then I went to Asia and went to new places. But then when I returned to London nearly 6 months later, I didn't feel any happier in myself than I did before. I had some great experiences under my belt, but I was still had this urge to be creative or something new. And that's when I somehow was put onto the path of the Camino. And the only thing that allowed me at that point to go traveling, having quit the well-paid job in London, was renting my flat out. So yeah.
So when you made the decision, I'm sure you shared with a couple of people, some close friends, relatives, and some people were thinking, is it a good move? Are you sure about it? I'm sure there was some backlash. That some people will tell you, yeah, it's not as simple as it seemed. Did you encounter some of that, and how did you handle?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it backlash. I think maybe I think people that are close to me knew that I wasn't happy in work. People knew that. I'd opened up, maybe not to my my boss or my general colleagues, and the fact I'd travelled for 18 months or so in the past. They kind of knew that I was, as I say, kind of had the travel bug as such. That said, I think, at least for my father, not that he didn't say don't do this. I think he couldn't understand the sense. Well, you've got this experience of doing well. You've gone away once. Isn't that enough to get out of your system? And now you're about to walk away a second time. But he didn't. He wasn't like sort of angry. He just, I think, perhaps a little bit like I could probably sense that he thought I was making mistakes. Not that he said that. And then I think. I remember thinking one or two friends, again, they didn't directly say this, but not that they weren't supportive, that they weren't sort of gushing really enthusiastic for me, thinking, well, what are you going to do after? This is great. You've done this before. What are you going to do after, kind of thing? But I think sort of my closer friends who were in London had sort of heard me moan in the pub before, who'd heard my sort of my frustrations. So that it was a mixture, I guess, of different things. But I guess the biggest person that might have given me some backlash was sort of probably some of my own internal demons, kind of like, what if some of these people who are doubtful are right? I don't really know what I'm doing. I've got some assets in a property, but I've also got a big mortgage on it. But the rent was covering the mortgage and they're giving me extra money to kind of travel in a backpack style, sort of shoestring approach. And obviously something like the Camino across northern Spain is not an expensive thing to do.
So is it fair to say that your departure was pre-announced, that you were sending signs for a few years and at some point it just happened for good?
Yeah, I think that is fair to say. And I think the ones which were more aware or more, were in my company more, had seen the signs, that at some point I would do it again. Yeah, I probably was putting out those sort of signals. Not that I was particularly aware about it, but and of course I was going through change again in my life then, going through separation and ultimate divorce and things. So there were changes in your life and in my life that I guess I was not on a consistent path, put it that way.
Yeah,
personally.
yeah. I think like when those feelings are that deep and profound, unless we are the discrete type, I don't know how much discrete you are, but like I can say on a personal level, I couldn't keep myself unnoticed. People will realize that something is happening, and it's just a matter of time. Like I will start to share some indications that there will be a diversion at some point. It might happen in a month, in a year, but it's about to happen because it's erupting, and you cannot just set it aside. I mean, people who know you, they can predict that there will be a next chapter along the way. It might take a couple of years, it might take less, but it's on the pipeline.
Yeah, and I think that's why when you said at the start of our conversation, transition, and you said maybe that's not the right word. I think it probably is, because it was a transition when I look back, that I'd been previously traveling independently and that had opened up a new world to me. I had gone back to work for a few years, and it re-energized me for sure. But at the same time, I was thinking, I'm not going to do this forever now, and I'm not going to, I'm not going to. I'm in my sort of mid-30s. I'm not going to be this. I don't want to be this sort of perhaps frustrated 40-year-old. I don't know all the answers yet, but so my mind was sort of perhaps working on that, and probably looking ahead to like, well, how can I make some income? How can I sustain myself in living this sort of alternative lifestyle means that I can afford to do that. And I guess one of the things from backpacking previously, and one of the things you learn on the Camino for sure, when you're just carrying everything on your back in a small backpack for 30 odd days, is that you don't need as many things that you think you do. The materialistic things aren't that important when it comes down to it. I mean, and I was in a materialistic world, and a lot of people had spent them, spent bonuses and their salary on nice cars or bigger flats, or kind of how to put it, Condé Nast style holidays and things like that. And I had a nice lifestyle, but it was mainly my flat, and so I think I learned I didn't need so much stuff when I returned. And not that I've been a particularly materialistic person in the past, but I think I was able to save more money. So I was able to put more money away when I was back in the corporate world, and use that later on. So I had a bit of money to do things and put towards real estate investment, for example. So it was a transition.